Right, so we're going to start off making our beats. So I need to find a kit for Group A, which I'll do by going into Browse mode. I've got the user button selected because I want to look through my user library, because I've actually got a pack from a new label on Loopmasters called Niche Audio, which has some good deep house kits. So I'm going to select the Rough Rider kit. And I'm going to keep the plus patterns button selected, which will load in the patterns that come with that kit. Not necessarily because I want to use them, just because it's a good way of auditioning the sounds in the kit. So let's load that in. Come out of Browse mode and check them out. So there's some nice sounds in there, but like I said, I don't want to keep the patterns. So I'm going to go into pattern mode, delete all of those patterns, and then create a new pattern in slot 1, which we'll keep set to 1 bar. Now let's program some drums, which I'm going to do first in step mode. Certainly the main drums, because I want them to be on the beat. So let's start with the kick, go into step mode. I'm going to keep it on fixed velocity, set to full velocity for now, and put the kicks on every beat of the bar. Now I'm going to layer that with a second kick. So there's 2 kicks in this group. The first one is the attackier one with the sort of slightly higher frequency punch. And then we've got the lower frequency subbier kick on pad 5. So let's lay that one in as well. Now we'll do the hat. So that goes on the upbeats. So downbeats on the first row, upbeats in between the kicks on this row. And lastly, I'm going to do the snare, which we'll have on beats 2 and 4. So let's check that out. Okay, so that's the main drums programmed in. But the next thing I want to do is add the first of our more live elements. And the way I'm going to do this is by doubling the hat on pad 3. This one's a sort of more regular high frequency one. We've actually got a more mid frequency hat on pad 8. So doubling them together will create a nice effect. First of all, I'm just going to bring down the level of the group a bit. It's a bit loud. Go down to about 6 dB below. Now I'm going to play this hat in live. As you can see in the pattern there, the events have differences in level, as you can see from the velocity bars below, and also timing. So it gives us this more natural feel as the level and timing varies a little bit in the break. If I want to, I can select the events, and I could quantize by 50% if I wanted to tighten it up a bit. But I actually prefer it a bit looser. I'm just going to bring down the volume a touch though. Okay, so the next sound I want to add is going to be something which is going to add more groove to our beats, which I'm going to do using the snare on pad 16. It's a good kind of sound for creating those offbeat syncopated drums, which make a beat much more interesting. I'm not going to add quite that many, so I'm just going to go to step mode. I'm going to add one, I think, on the 16th note just before beat 4. First of all, it's a bit loud, so I'm going to go to the sounds channel settings and then set the audio output using this encoder just to bring it down a bit. And also, it's not sounding that lazy at the moment because it's right on the beat. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to Group, set it to Groove, and I'm just going to turn up the swing amount just to make the drum a little bit lazier. So the reason I've done this to the whole group is that any drums I now add in step mode or otherwise that are precisely on these beats here will be shifted by exactly the same amount so that everything's locked into the same groove. Okay, I'm also going to double up the snare now using this finger snap on pad 7. So going to step mode, I just add it to beats 2 and 4. But what I want to do is make it just a little bit lazier. So what I'm going to do is go to select mode, select the events, and then making sure the grid is off, and that's the step grid, not the perform or pattern. Now I can just use this position encoder just to shift them a little bit later. Around about there sounds good, but again it's a bit loud, so come out of select mode and then use the output to bring the level down a bit. So now I'm going to turn this 1-bar pattern into a 2-bar pattern by doubling it in pattern mode. And I'll also zoom out a bit so I can see it better. Okay, now I want to add some groove elements, which I'm going to do to the 2nd bar of the phrase. I'm going to add this clap sound and this vocal sound. And I'll do it in step mode, starting with the clap. That's the effect I'm going for, but it's a bit loud again, so I'll turn it down using the level dial. It's around about right, and now let's do the vocal sample. Next thing I want to add is this tambourine on pad 4, which will add some nice high frequency percussion to our drums. I'm going to play this in using 16 velocity mode, which will allow me to keep some regularity to the velocities of my events. I'm going to play it in live, so it'll have a natural timing, but the velocities will remain constant. I'm going to play in quite a simple pattern, a bit like this. But you could easily play in a faster pattern. That kind of pattern's good for things like shakers, but I'll keep it slow in this case. Timing's pretty good. If I like, I could quantize it by 50%, but not all the way. First of all, make sure my grid is set to 16ths, and then select the events and try quantizing it. Yeah, I think quantizing by 50% definitely helped there. So I've just noticed that this 3rd event in the tambourine pattern, actually when I quantized by 50%, it got pushed towards the next 16th grid position rather than the one I intended it to, because my playing was a bit too off. So what it did though is it created a nice shuffle, which I quite like with the hat. So I want to add a couple of extra events which create that same kind of effect. However, I'm going to adjust this one first, which I'm going to do with the mouse with the grid off just because it's quick to do. I'm just going to drag it back so it's closer to that first position again. And now in step mode, I'm going to add in the first bar a couple of extra steps, making sure the velocity is where I want it to be. Yeah, just slightly louder than the quiet tambourine sounds. So remember, these ones are locked into our groove, so it adds to that shuffle that's already in our pattern. I'm just going to leave it in the first bar for now because there's already a few things going on in the second one. The last sound I want to add for now is going to be one that's not actually in our kit, and it's going to be a kind of FX type sound. I'm going to load it into one of the pads I'm not using. There's some cool organ sounds on these pads, but I don't think I'm going to use them. I'm definitely not going to use this one. So what I'm going to do is go into browse mode and replace it with a sample, which is one of the buzz samples from Maschine's factory collection. So I'll load that in. It's quite a full-on noisy sound, which is kind of what I'm after. But what I want to do is change the envelope, set to ADSR. So I've got more control over when the sound is heard, depending on the length of the event or how long I hold the pad for. Take the release down, so it stops as soon as I let go. And what I want to do is create more of a fade in, so it creates a slide into the first snare in the drum break. So I need to add some attack. I can fine tune it later, but so you can hear that's now fading in rather than having such an initial hit. So let's add this to our break, which I'm going to do in step mode. I'm going to switch it to eighths because I want it to sound on the second quaver of the first beat. Which is this one, just before the snare. Make the velocity a bit louder. About there. Pretty good, but I might change the attack a little bit, make it a bit longer. So you can hear this gives us a nice swell into the snare, which creates a cool effect. Might want to drop the level down a bit, but for now, I'll leave it like that. Next thing I want to do is add a few effects to the sounds. First up, the buzz sound we just added. I'm going to add a delay to that. So switch to a free slot, go into modules mode, scroll down to the delays. We want beat delay. That creates a nice effect which goes or continues on throughout the 2-bar pattern. Make the feedback a bit longer though, so it continues on. Bring the mix down so it's not quite so obvious, and bring up the color so it's a bit brighter. It's nice. I might also add a high-pass filter because it'd be nice to roll off a bit of that bottom end. Make sure I've got free slot selected first, and then filter, high-pass. Might also add a few effects to the snare, maybe just a chorus and also a high-pass filter as well. So I've added a chorus and a high-pass filter to this snare now, just to give it a bit more character and width. What I'm going to do now is just add some effects to the whole group, so all of our drums together. So back into modules mode. First one is going to be a compressor, and then second one, an EQ. So if I hit play now, you'll hear our drums already will sound a lot fatter. But if I switch to mixer mode, then I can edit the compressor. Mixer mode is better for this because it shows you the meters on the compressor, so it shows you the gain reduction to see what's actually going on. You can see from that really it's the kick that's making the compressor pump more than anything. So I do want to change the settings a little bit, but first of all I'm going to mute my kicks. And then I'm going to play around with my compressor settings a bit, bringing down the threshold and probably decreasing the amount a little bit. If I bring the kick back in now, we'll probably see that it's going to be a bit too loud, so I might want to bring that down in the mix. Decrease the attack a little just to make it a bit punchier. And finally, just the EQ, all I'm going to do is boost the low frequencies and the top end as well a little bit, just because normally compression will squash these bits the most. The transients because they're the loudest bits at the start, and the low frequency because that's always the loudest part of the signal. That's got quite a nice break now. If I take those effects off, you can hear the difference they make. After applying these effects, you might want to go back and adjust the balance in some of the other drums a little bit. So I'll go in and do that now. Now that the drums are basically there, I'm going to move on to a melodic sound. So I've got this preset called Gentle Keys loaded into Group B, which is a nice keys kind of pad stabby sound. And I'm now going to jam out the hook, which is going to form the basis of the track, which I'll do by using various chords on the different notes in our minor scale, which I'll explain more about shortly.